It just happened. In a move that has sent shockwaves through the world of sports, the US Olympic Committee has officially banned transgender women from competing in women's events. The decision came just 2 weeks after President Trump's controversial executive order, an order designed to, in his words, keep men out of women's sports. From legendary Olympic athletes to global civil rights groups, the country has been split down the middle. Chaos is erupting in headlines. Accusations are flying on social media, and the road to the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics has just taken a dramatic and potentially irreversible turn. Stay tuned because we are breaking down exactly what happened, who is fighting back, and what this decision truly means for the future of sports in America. The decision that changed everything. On July 22, 2025, without a press conference or public warning, the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, the USOPC, quietly published a stunning policy update to its code of conduct. The wording was not buried in legal jargon. It was sharp, clear, and absolute. In compliance with Executive Order 14201, and to preserve fairness in competition as mandated, the USOPC will not recognize policies that permit individuals who were born male to participate in designated female categories in any Olympic or Paralympic sport. Let's be clear what this means. This isn't a suggestion. It's a mandate. Every single U.S. Olympic governing body, from USA Swimming and USA Track and Field to USA Fencing and USA Gymnastics, is now required to rewrite its eligibility rules. The threat is existential. Comply with the president's order or risk losing federal funding and official recognition from the USOPC. For these organizations, that's a death sentence. It means no funding for athlete development, no access to world-class training centers, and no path to the Olympic Games for any of their athletes. The executive order that triggered it. So how did we get here? To understand the USOPC's hand, you have to look at the power that forced it. Back in February 2025, President Trump signed Executive Order 14201, titled Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports. The order was sweeping. It mandated that any organization receiving federal funds must ensure athletes compete exclusively according to their sex assigned at birth, not their gender identity. This wasn't just aimed at the Olympics. It applies to public schools, universities, and any sports team receiving taxpayer money. The move immediately ignited a firestorm. LGBTQ plus advocacy groups labeled it the most aggressive and damaging federal rollback of transgender rights in decades. At the time, the USOPC remained silent, caught between federal law and its own stated principles of inclusion. But behind the scenes, the pressure was building into an unbearable crescendo. Now that silence has been broken. The policy is official, and enforcement has begun. The instant and painful fallout. Within hours, the internet exploded. The National Women's Law Center released a scathing statement, calling the policy a targeted political attack wrapped in a thin veil of sports regulation. It uses women's sports as a pawn to erase transgender people from public life. They argue it violates not just the rights of athletes, but the core principles of Title IX and bodily autonomy.
She's 17. She wakes up at 4 a.m. every single day to train. She has posters of Olympians on her wall. That is her dream. We followed every rule, every hormone level requirement. We did everything they asked. And now, you're telling me my daughter's dream is gone? Just like that? Because a politician signed a piece of paper? This isn't about fairness. This is about cruelty.
On the flip side, conservative commentators and some prominent female athletes celebrated the move. Riley Gaines, the former NCAA swimmer who has become a leading voice for this cause, called it a courageous and necessary step to preserve the integrity of women's sports for generations to come. But the reaction wasn't uniform, even among those you'd expect. Former Olympian Caitlyn Jenner, herself a transgender woman and once a vocal critic of trans athletes in women's sports, released a complicated statement. I have always said that biology in elite competition is paramount, but a blanket ban that ignores nuance, science, and the specifics of each sport is a blunt instrument, not a solution. This feels less like protection and more like politics. So now the lines are blurred. The debate is boiling over, and it's creating fractures within communities themselves. A global shift. Here's the context most people are missing. This isn't just an American culture war. It's part of a seismic global shift. Over the past 2 years, several of the world's most powerful sports federations have already tightened or outright banned transgender participation in elite women's categories. World Athletics, which governs track and field, banned trans women who have been through male puberty from elite female events. World Aquatics did the same for swimming, creating a controversial open category that has yet to see significant uptake. The Union Cycliste Internationale, UCI, followed suit. Now, with the United States, the biggest player in Olympic history, enforcing a federal ban, the pressure on the International Olympic Committee, IOC, is immense. The IOC has so far punted, urging individual federations to create their own rules based on the science, but refusing to set one global standard. With the USOPC's move, the IOC's fence-sitting is no longer tenable. The coming legal war. This policy isn't just a new chapter, it's the start of a new war. Legal experts across the country agree that the USOPC's move is a direct invitation for massive lawsuits. Why? Because it creates a direct conflict between federal mandates and state law. States like California, New York, and Washington have state-level protections that explicitly allow transgender athletes to compete based on their gender identity. Now, those laws are on a collision course with Trump's federal mandate. We are looking at a potential Supreme Court showdown over foundational American questions: civil rights versus biological definitions, federal power versus states' rights, and the very soul of Title IX versus the authority of a president. The ACLU and the Human Rights Campaign have already announced they are preparing a major lawsuit on behalf of 3 teenage athletes whose Olympic dreams were just extinguished. The bottom line? This story is far from over. It's heading to court. The heart of the matter, the science. So let's pause. Let's cut through the politics and the legal threats, because the heart of this entire firestorm is a single, deeply complex question: biology versus identity. Supporters of the ban argue that transgender women, even after years of hormone therapy, retain significant physical advantages from male puberty: bone density, larger lung capacity, greater muscle mass. They say it's not about hate, it's about the biological reality of meaningful competition. Critics argue that this is a gross oversimplification. They point to studies showing that hormone therapy dramatically mitigates these advantages. They argue that fairness isn't just about physiology, it's about inclusion. And they stress that the supposed threat is statistically tiny, while the harm of exclusion is immense. In fact, the International Olympic Committee's own 2021 framework stated, no athlete should be presumed to have an unfair advantage, and no athlete should be excluded unless that advantage is proven to be disproportionate and science-based. The new U.S. policy ignores that nuance. It is a blanket ban, and that, critics say, is how you know it's driven by politics, not science. The shadow over the LA Olympics. And here is the final wild twist in this story. The 2028 Summer Olympics will be hosted in Los Angeles, California, one of the most progressive LGBTQ+ friendly cities on Earth. A city whose state laws protect the very athletes the U.S. Olympic team may now be forced to ban. The mayor of Los Angeles has already issued a defiant statement. Los Angeles is a city of inclusion. We will not support discrimination on our soil. The world will be watching how the United States treats its own athletes. So we face an unprecedented scenario: protests, boycotts, or even international athletes refusing to compete on U.S. ground out of solidarity. Can you imagine the Olympic torch ceremony, a symbol of global unity, being overshadowed by political protest against the host nation itself? This controversy could poison the games before they even begin. Final thoughts: the debate of a generation. Whether you believe this decision is a victory for fairness or a devastating blow to human rights, one thing is now undeniable: America is at a crossroads. The U.S. Olympic Committee's decision isn't just about who gets to stand on a podium. It's about identity, fairness, science, and the very soul of what we want sports to be. Some say this is protecting women. Others say it is erasing an entire community. This debate is no longer theoretical. It is real, it is law, and it starts now. Comment below with your thoughts. Subscribe for breaking updates on this story. And if you believe this conversation is important, share this video. Let's make sure everyone is part of it.